Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Scoreboard with Ethan. This is my favorite time of year. I'm super excited. I'm doing my first official 2025 NFL mock draft. It is one day before the NFL draft. And if you have watched some of my older videos, you'll notice that I said the wrong dates for the mock draft. It's the 24th, or the 25th, and the 26th. It's just like the last probably like 3-4 years. It's been the 26th, 27th, and 28th of April. So I accidentally said the wrong dates. It is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's always pretty much like the last Thursday, Friday, Saturday of the year in April. So I have my coffee. I'm a happy hubby. My wife has me all set up in my man cave. So I'm going to do my full first round mock draft, like I said. And I'm going to do, I'll say where I think there'll be trades. And I did give my top 10 in the shorts, but I'm going to change one pick. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I'm hearing like a lot of buzz with, me doing like my research and stuff and, staying up with the sports. I'm hearing like a lot of buzz about one player, that is becoming like very, very likely that they're going to go to a different spot than I originally thought was like their best landing spot and what I thought like the franchise would do. So I'm going to change, I have a little bit of a domino effect. It's going to change basically like 2 picks. I'll be looking down from time to time. I have like my tablet, my iPad, where I have like my mock draft. I did do the mock draft on like the PFF mock draft simulator. So if there's any people who come to this channel, they like to do mock drafts and they want to be like interactive in the future, you can go to PFF. You can do it for free, so you could pay. You get like a year subscription. You could pay like $25 a month, which is, I think is like excessive. I do like PFF, but that's like really expensive just to do a mock draft. So like if you want to like beat the system, like essentially what you could do is you could if you want to do like more than one mock draft, which I did a few. So like if you notice like on my thumbnail, I know people like might say something in the comments that some of my picks in the thumbnail are a little different, but what it is it's just because like this PFF mock simulator, I did like 3 of them, just trying out different scenarios and stuff. So like my actual mock draft that I said in my shorts is a little bit different than like what I did in the PFF simulator, because I changed it like a few times, because just have like a little fun with it, try out like a couple different scenarios. And I'll go over like a few different scenarios, like what I think will potentially happen, and like the most likely like landing spots for each player with each franchise. And some player could potentially go to a couple of different franchises. So that's like essentially what I'm going to do. And like when I do my mock drafts, what I like to do is I like to do a combination of like not just what I think will happen, but also what what I think like the team like actually really needs. Because like draft, when you build a franchise, you have to build your franchise based on like what your team needs. But also sometimes like a player could fall to you and you just feel like, well, I'm gonna take the best player on the board. But I try to do like a combination of like, I really like research the teams, see what they need, see like what the GMs are saying about potentially players like they're interested in, players they're taking on like to visits, because they're allowed to also they're allowed to interview a certain amount of players, take players on like visits, in-person visits with the owners and GMs. And also they're allowed to go to the scouts are allowed to go to their pro days, their combines, stuff like that. So I really try to do like a combination of like not just what I think will happen and what I think is best for the franchise, but also like the most likely like landing spot for the player. So I did change one pick. I thought for like a long time this one player was going to go to like a certain team, and but now there's like a lot of buzz I've been hearing like the last week, and now it's like really looking like it's really going to happen. So I'm gonna have to change like 2 players in my top 10, which I hate to do because I did already come out with like a few days ago with my shorts with my top 10. Now people are going to be like, oh, you're changing it, but stuff changes like minute by minute. So that's why the mock drafts are fun to do. So I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna tell you, I'll tell you the team, I'll tell you the pick the team that's picking the player I believe they'll most likely pick. If there's a couple other players, I'll say maybe, they might potentially take, this player because they have this need. And also, if there's teams that I feel strongly that could potentially be, trades, I can say, well, this team potentially, could trade back, could trade up, or what have you. This mock draft it's not a mock draft like with trades, but I will go over like some like scenarios where I think there are like some trades. So I'm super excited. The draft's tomorrow. I love doing, the mock drafts. I used to do the mock drafts like with my blog. I would do, mock drafts and do like a, a write-up. So instead of having like type it up, I get to, just talk about it, on YouTube, and, I'll be talking about it like on my podcast really soon. So it's easier for me just to talk about it rather than have to, manually type it up. So I know people are a lot more interested, on YouTube than blogs. So I'm gonna get into it. So with the first pick for the 2025 NFL draft, I think this is like the easiest pick. Usually the number one pick is pretty simple. Usually there's a consensus number one for most drafts, especially if the team like really needs a quarterback. And this draft is interesting in the sense that like the Titans need a quarterback, the Browns need a quarterback, the Giants need a quarterback, and even the Colts at 14 like really need a quarterback. But the Giants, I think like a week before the end of the season, the Giants had the number one pick, but they ended up winning like their last game or second to last game. And then there's a lot of talk about the coach, getting fired. So I was kind of thinking, the coach is kind of like sticking it to the general manager and, the owner and stuff. So, the Giants ended up not getting the first pick, but, and then the Browns, they, like the Browns, the Giants, and the Titans, they all had like 3 wins. So it kind of came down to, since I don't think any of them played each other, so it came down to like common opponent. And, kind of by process of elimination, the Titans got the number one pick. But the Titans also had like the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion, with Will Levis. So they really need a quarterback. So I'm like pretty much 100% certain that they're going to take the Miami quarterback, Cam Ward. So they'll take him number one. Number 2 is pretty interesting. And there's like 2 like strong scenarios. But I did say that the Cleveland Browns would take, he's kind of like an athlete because he's like wide receiver and a quarterback, so you consider him like an athlete. They'll designate him as like an athlete, and they'll take Travis Hunter. And there's a lot of talk that the Browns general manager wants to use him first as a wide receiver, as their wide receiver 1, but they'll also use him as a cornerback. So like Travis Hunter is like a very special player. He's what do you call like a unicorn? He's like the first player, honestly, since like Deion Sanders, who has like the ability to like, start at one position and be like a wide receiver 1 or like a cornerback 1, but also play on the other side of the ball and be like the team's best receiver too. So like he would literally be like the Browns' best receiver. He's going to be better than Jerry Jeudy right now. Their best receiver, their wide receiver 1 is Jerry Jeudy, and he's, pretty good, but he's like a low-end wide receiver 1 and like really a wide receiver 2. But like, Travis Hunter's going to be better than him. He'll be their wide receiver 1, but he could also like be good enough to be like potentially their like cornerback 1 as well. Like the Browns do have some good corners, and they are kind of known for their defense. So I believe the Browns will go Travis Hunter. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 95% sure that they're going to go Travis Hunter over Abdul Carter. The only reason I was, talking with some of my buddies about Abdul Carter is just the fact that, right now, like they don't have a very good quarterback. They had, on their roster, they just signed, Joe Flacco to a 1-year deal for like $4 million, but he's also like, I think like 41 or 42, but he was comeback player of the year like 2 years ago. But like last year with the Colts, he kind of was like really up and down and struggled. So I don't know how well he'll do in Cleveland, but I mean, like the only other player they have is Mason Rudolph, and he's really like at best, I don't even know if he's good enough to be a backup. So I mean, they're really struggling at quarterback. So I think like because of that, you could argue like, well, like my logic and argument for Abdul Carter is, well, you have Myles Garrett, you signed him to a big deal. 40 million a year, 140 million overall. So like you'll have Myles Garrett, like arguably like the best defensive end in the NFL, if not the best. Like, there's also Bosa and TJ Watt. So, depending on how you rate them, he's definitely top 3, if not number 1. He might be 2 or 3. I really like TJ Watt, but Myles Garrett just won Defensive Player of the Year. So, there's like strong argument. We won it 2 years ago. Patrick Surtain just won it this last year, but there's like really a strong argument to have Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett, and you'll have essentially like the best defensive line in the NFL, and you'll be able to get pressure on like quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, who are like in your division, and then you can kind of just essentially not be a great team, still get a high draft pick, and then next year if Arch Manning comes out, you can, kind of like quote unquote like tank for Arch Manning if he, decides to leave Texas. And I don't know if he will, because it'll be his first year starting. I think the only way Arch Manning will leave Texas is if he wins like the Heisman Trophy and the national championship. But people are already talking about him, as the consensus number 1 pick. So I know the Giants will be interested, the Browns will be interested, so the Colts probably will be interested, because we'll see how the Colts do with only having like Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones on their roster. But I would argue for Abdul Carter. I think if I were the GM, it's a really tough pick. I just feel like, you really can't miss with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. So I think either pick is great. It just depends like which kid you like better when you interview them, who you think's a better culture fit, my screen keeps going down. And if they love Travis Hunter and they're like, well, we really need a wide receiver 1. And we can also use him as a punt returner, kick returner, use him on, half the defensive plays. And he can just be our starting wide receiver, and we'll pair him with Jerry Jeudy. We'll have Flacco for 1 year. But there's logic could be, well, we're going to take Travis Hunter at 2. And then, there's argument that the Saints could take, Shadur Sanders at 9. And, the Steelers might take Jackson Dart, at 21. So their 2 options are we could take, Travis Hunter at 2, and then we could either trade back into the first round if we want to give up a bunch, which I don't think they will, and try to take Shadur Sanders and trade up like back to 8, which really doesn't make any sense. If the Saints, take, either Shadur Sanders or Jackson Dart at 9, I think there's, they really need a quarterback too, because essentially, Derek Carr's going to be out the entire year, and now the only quarterback they'll have on their roster would be Spencer Rattler, and I don't think he's a professional quarterback. So he was really bad last year as a rookie. At best, maybe he'll be lucky and be able to be a backup, but I don't even know if he could do that. So, but I think what the Browns are most likely going to do is they'll take Travis Hunter at number 2, and if they like Jackson Dart, maybe they trade back, into the first round, trade and get like the 20th pick, like trade with like the Broncos. I don't think the Broncos will do it because they really want Omari on Hampton. So maybe trade with like the Bengals or the Seahawks at like 17, 18. But the Browns also have 10 draft picks. So what they could do, what I think they really might do, my best guess and what I would probably do is, I haven't heard the Browns talk about, Shadur Sanders much lately or Jackson Dart really at all. So I don't think they're going to go after either of those guys. What I think they'll do is they'll take Travis Hunter at 2. I would say if I were the GM, I might go Abdul Carter just to have the 2 best defensive ends to go after Burrow and Lamar Jackson for the next 5 years, because they'll have Abdul Carter on a rookie deal for 5 years, and they have Myles Garrett sewed up for 5 years. So you could just, go after Lamar Jackson and Burrow for 5 years. So I'd probably take Abdul Carter, but I think they're going to take Travis Hunter. That's why in my mock I put Travis Hunter. And then in the second round, they'll have the 34th pick. What I would do if I were them and I were the owner, Haslam, is in the second round, I would overdraft Jalen Milroe, and I would just take Jalen Milroe in the second round. I think he's like a second or a third round grade. He's probably like my QB4 right now. Some people have him maybe a little higher than that. Maybe he's their QB3. I just think, Cam Ward's 1, Shedeur Sanders is 2, Jackson Dart 3, and then Jalen Milroe 4. But Jalen Milroe is he's a very raw talent, but he has the highest ceiling like in the draft as far as, how good he could be. He's just a very raw talent. And I think because like they did sign a veteran quarterback with Joe Flacco, like they can draft Jalen Milroe and just jump for him in the second round, take him at 34. They have 8 other picks after that. They'll have Travis Hunter. They'll have, Jalen Milroe, their quarterback of the future. And then they have their veteran quarterback, Joe Flacco, who like Milroe can learn from for at least 1 year. He can sit behind, Joe Flacco the whole year, basically like red shirt, like you would like in college, right, when you get recruited out of high school. And you can just learn from Flacco, a veteran quarterback, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, comeback player of the year, Super Bowl MVP, and you can just learn like the professional game, and they could just develop him. So I think that would be like a good move for them, since they're not really talking at all about Jackson Dart, because I mean really they don't want to give up too much assets. They don't want to like trade up past the Steelers, because they just be giving up too many draft picks. If you want to get back into that top 10, you have to give up like multiple draft picks, and like if they don't love Shedeur Sanders, it's not worth it. They could just wait, take Jalen Milroe early in the second, don't let anybody else get him. You got your 2 guys, and then you just fill the rest of your roster out. So I think they'll take Travis Hunter. If it were me, I would take Abdul Carter, and I love Travis Hunter, like don't get me wrong. It's just to have the 2 best defensive ends potentially in the NFL for the next 5 years, when you have to like stop Joe Burrow and that Bengals offense with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Chase Brown, like, and you have to stop Lamar Jackson, like the greatest athlete at quarterback in like NFL history, like Mike Vick 2.0, like to have 2 defensive ends, it's like that's really nice, But Travis Hunter is like maybe a player we've honestly never seen ever. He's like maybe Deion Sanders on steroids, because he's literally like a wide receiver 1 and a cornerback 1. Like Deion's like the greatest corner of all time. I have him on my wall right here. He's like, him and Revis Island and Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson are some of the greatest corners of all time. But prime time was like on a whole different level with his ability to like return kicks, return punts, like step off a plane and run like a 4.15 40 with like some alligator shoes on. So yeah, he was crazy. But I think the Browns, I think they will draft Travis Hunter, but like if it were me, I would probably take Abdul Carter, because like the AFC North, the mentality is just like smash mouth football, old school football, build, inside out with your offensive defensive lines. They don't have their quarterback of the future yet, so why not build the defense, right? So I would take Abdul Carter, but I really think they're going to take Travis Hunter. I'm like 95% sure. And then obviously the Giants, they're just in a position where, they're not going to get Cam Ward, obviously. So that's why they signed Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson to, I think Russell Wilson's a 1-year deal and has a lot of incentives. So it's like real, like GM and like organizational, like friendly. And they signed Jameis Winston to 2 years, but I think either Jameis Winston or Danny DeVito will be like cut before the season starts. And it's probably DeVito because Winston's better. So they'll probably have like Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston as their quarterbacks this year. And they could also draft a quarterback in the second or third rounds as well. If there's like a late round guy they like, or, they just take Abdul Carter. They already have like a really good defensive line. They have, Dexter Lawrence. They got Kayvon Thibodeau. They'll have, Abdul Carter. Like the argument for that is, it's pretty simple. Like, they're not going to get Cam Ward, and they either get Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. And, whatever the Browns do, they're just going to take the other guy, because these top 3 players are like by far the best players in the draft. I'll also put, Ashton Genty as like, the top 4 players in my board. Those are my top 4 players. Travis Hunter 1, Abdul Carter 2, Genty 3, and Cam Ward 4. But, because Cam's a quarterback and the Titans need a quarterback, he's going to go number 1. So, they're just going to take whoever's left, and they'll have a very strong defensive line. And then, they're going to have to find their quarterback either later in this draft, or they just run with their 2 guys that they picked up in free agency, which I think they'll probably do. I don't know if they'll sign another rookie quarterback because they do have like, DeVito. So if they do, draft a quarterback, later on, maybe, they take Milroe. If the Browns don't, maybe they jump on Milroe. Or they can take, like the Texas quarterback, Ewers. And so there's a couple other guys, the Rutgers quarterback is good, Show. don't know if I pronounced his name right, because everybody I listen to pronounces it differently. So, also the Oregon quarterback, Dylan Gabriel is out there. He's going to be like more of a late round quarterback, but he might be a sleeper just because I watched him at Central Florida. I watched him at Oregon, and I just love how he's able to change the culture of a team. That's like my biggest valuation that I put on Shedeur Sanders when I get to him, where I think he's going to go. Like my favorite thing about Shedeur is, he comes in, he can change the culture, and that's what you really need for like these NFL teams that are drafting number 1 every year, number 2 every year, in the top 5 or 10 every year. They need somebody who can come in and change a culture, and like Shedeur's done that at Jackson State. It was Division 1 AA, but he also did it at Colorado. Like Colorado was horrible. They had won 1 game the previous year, and then with Shedeur, and Coach Prime, they were winning in the double digits and going Big 12 champs and going to bowl games. So he got Big 12 Player of the Year. So he's able to change a culture. So, but yeah, the Giants, I think, they do have ties, obviously, to Arch Manning with Eli Manning and, the Manning family. So maybe they just wait. They just ride out Russell Wilson for 1 year. They have Jameis for 2 years. Russell Wilson maybe plays 1 year, maybe he retires, and they still can have, Jameis for 1 more year, another veteran quarterback. And if Arch comes out, if the Giants are still bad, which they probably will because the Eagles are going to be really good, the Commanders are going to be really good in division, and the Cowboys are kind of like, they might, I guess they'll be okay. Jerry Jones is kind of, I'm not his biggest fan right now, but, what Cowboys are probably going to be okay, right? I mean, they won 7 games with Cooper Rush. They get Dak Prescott back. CeeDee Lamb missed a few games. He'll be healthy. We'll get like a running back in the draft, so we'll sign Michael Parsons at some point. Jerry loves to wait as long as he possibly can. So, who knows how long that'll take, but, we'll sign at some point before the season starts, we'll sign, Micah Parsons. I'm assuming the Cowboys win like 8 or 9 games. So, the Giants are going to be bad. They'll be the worst team. They might win, 5 with Russ. So, they'll take whoever's there, either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. In my mock, I put Abdul Carter because there's just too much talk that the Browns are going to take Travis Hunter. So I can't, say, well, I think Abdul Carter's going to go to the Browns, but there's all this talk that, they're going to take Travis Hunter. So, and then at number 4, at the Patriots, I really believe the Patriots need an offensive tackle. So they're going to take Will Campbell. Vrabel is their new head coach. He's coming from like the Belichick, coaching tree. And, he knows he's a defensive-minded coach. And, when you build a franchise, they have their franchise quarterback. They have Drake May, so they have their guy. He's their QB1. He's their franchise quarterback. And, they have, they're not going to get Abdul Carter, the best defensive end. They could go, another defensive end. They could go, there's, some other defensive ends like Mike Green, but, Donovan Azaraku, they could go Jalen Walker. There's buzz that they could go Jalen Walker, but I think with the Patriots, it's either going to be, they go, like, what I meant to say is, when you build an NFL franchise, first you get your quarterback. They have their head coach. They have Vrabel. They have their quarterback, Drake May. And the next thing you do is either you protect your quarterback with your blind side offensive tackle. He's a right-handed quarterback. Will Campbell's is a left tackle, so he'll protect Drake May's blind side. So either you protect him with Will Campbell, or you go after the other team, the opponent's quarterback. So you take a defensive end. So you're probably thinking, well, Abdul Carter will be gone, so the best defensive end is gone. So do we take the best offensive tackle, or do we take the second best defensive end? And I think, Vrabel's kind of came out. He said a lot about, Will Campbell. So, if you're thinking, well, should we take the best offensive tackle, or I'm a defensive coach, I'll take the second best defensive end, and we'll take Jalen Walker. So I think the 2 picks they most plausibly do will be either Will Campbell or Jalen Walker. In my mock, I put Will Campbell because Vrabel, the head coach, just came out and said how much he likes Will Campbell. So I think the best thing to do is, when you have your franchise quarterback, the first thing I would do is protect him. Then, I would go after the defense and, start going after the opposing team's quarterback. So I think they'll take Will Campbell, but the other person they could take is Jalen Walker. So number 5 on my original mock draft, I did put the Jaguars to take Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham, but this whole last week there's been way too much talk about the Jaguars taking Ashton Jeanty. So I'll make one change. I'm going to change it. I'm going to say that the Jaguars will take Ashton Jeanty. I think both are a really good fit. Like, the Jaguars do need help on their defensive line, on their interior defensive line, and Mason Graham is by far the best interior defensive lineman. He's the best D tackle in the draft. He's a huge human being. I think he's like 6'4", and 335 pounds. So he's humongous. But there's just too much talk that the Jags now, this last week, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of talk, and a lot of stories coming out that they're going to take Ashton Jeanty. I thought Jeanty would go 6 to the Raiders. I didn't think he would fall past 6. I thought the other landing spot could be 10 to the Bears, which I think would be a really great fit for him and probably the best situation for him. So one trade I had thought of was if the Bears really wanted Ashton Jeanty, and everybody's thinking Jeanty's going to go to the Raiders, the Bears could trade up from 10 and trade up to 5 with the Jaguars, and the Jaguars would trade back. But the only risk would be the Jaguars would have to be well, if we trade back to 10, can we still get our guy Mason Graham? But now that's kind of out the window. That would have been the first trade. I thought that was very plausible because Jeanty with Caleb Williams, the Reba offensive line, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and the new head coach Ben Johnson. He kind of put Jahmyr Gibbs on the map. And now, the Lions had the highest flying offense in the NFL the last couple years with Ben Johnson. So Ashton Jeanty would have been a perfect fit, but there's just so much buzz with Jeanty going to the Jaguars that I'm going to change it. I'm going to put Jeanty going 5 to the Jaguars. He's by far the best running back in the draft. He's the RB1. Even in fantasy right now, he's out of all the running backs, even as a rookie, never playing one game, he's RB4 right now, and he's tier 1 or tier 2 fantasy running back. So he's a hot commodity already. Me and my buddy were always talking about he has the number 1 pick in fantasy, so he's going Jeanty, and I'm always trying to think of scenarios where we could do a trade to where I could get Jeanty, but I have the 3rd pick in fantasy, so I'm just going to take T-Mac, Tetra McMillan. But yeah, we kind of give each other a hard time and say how much would it take to get Jeanty. So I'm going to say that the Jaguars are going to take Ashton Jeanty. That's the only pick I'll trade, so I don't get too many comments from people giving me a hard time changing my mock draft last minute. But the only reason I'm doing it is because when I do these mock drafts, I try to give you guys the best information. I try to do my best analysis and say where I really believe these guys are going to go, not just solely what I would do, but also what I really think the team is going to do, not just what they should do and what I think they should do, but also what I realistically think they will do. So, Jeanty's, he's going to be probably potentially a perennial all-pro running back. There's a lot of comparisons of him to Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson was the best fantasy running back in the NFL last year. He was RB1, so there's all these comparisons. So, the logic behind the Jaguars getting Ashton Jeanty is because they tied up a lot of money into Trevor Lawrence, their quarterback. They're giving him $55 million a year. He's had a lot of injuries. He had a really bad year last year. And they also have Brian Thomas Jr. He's their wide receiver 1. He was a rookie last year, so they'll have a wide receiver 1 on a rookie deal. Jeanty, RB1 on a rookie deal, so they have 2 really good players, probably top 10 receiver and running back in the NFL and in fantasy. And they don't have to pay them very much money for 5 years, and then they can kind of keep the cap space open to get other talent to help Trevor Lawrence, protect him, because they've invested so much money into Trevor Lawrence. They're paying him Joe Burrow money, and he's not playing like Joe Burrow, so they really are in a situation where they can't trade him because the contract is, at this point, it's a bad contract because they paid him a lot of money. He's the 2nd highest paid quarterback. Him and Burrow are tied. Dak's the highest. So, Dak's also a bad contract, even though I like the Cowboys. Jerry gave him way too much money for what he's done. But, that was, a poor choice. And I think the Trevor Lawrence deal obviously now is like a poor choice. And now the Jaguars like, well, we can't trade him. We're not going to eat all that money if we have to trade him. A team's not going to want to pay much of that $55 million contract per year because he's, he potentially could be injury prone. He's not, winning. He's not turning the culture around. So, what the Jaguars have done is they got him a new offensive-minded head coach with Liam Cohen. They got him, Brian Thomas Jr. last year, and then they gave him Ashton Jeanty this year. So now there's no excuses. It's on Trevor Lawrence. And on top of that, they play in really like the worst division in the NFL in the AFC South. Like the Colts are going to stink. The only good team is the Texans. Like the Colts are going to stink. The Titans will still stink, even with Cam Ward. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a couple of years. It probably takes 2-3 years. Most rookie quarterbacks are bad. So really, the only competition the Jaguars have in that division, since they have their franchise guy and the Texans have their franchise guy, C.J. Stroud, is the Texans. You win 10 games in the AFC South, you're probably going to the playoffs, right? I think the Texans won 9 last year and went to the playoffs. So, at this point, if they get Ashton Jeanty with Brian Thomas Jr., with Liam Cohen, like it's on Trevor Lawrence at this point. Like, you got to stay healthy and you got to win. You got them to the playoffs one time a couple years ago, but now it's like pretty much like put up or shut up. You got the bag. Now you got to like produce. You're getting $55 million a year. Like you got to be a contender. So I understand the move. I love Ashton Jeanty. Like, even like the Browns, you can make an argument to take Ashton Jeanty, just to help out like their offense. But they're gonna probably go Travis Hunter. He is a better player. He can play both ways. They want to use him both ways. So you could even argue the Patriots take Ashton Jeanty. He's so darn good. But I just really think they're going to protect Drake May. That's their franchise guy. They already signed up, Ramondre Stevenson to a deal this offseason. So, they're tied up. They gave him some money, like $50 million a year, I think. $50 million for a few years, like 3 years or something. So, I don't think the Patriots take him. So, Jeanty at 5, it does make sense. I just heard so much buzz that they were going to take Mason Graham. I'm like, well, I'm trying to do like the most realistic mock, so I'm gonna put Mason Graham. But Ashton Jeanty to a lot of teams makes sense because he's gonna be really good. So now the Raiders become like very interesting because I really thought it was gonna be Jeanty, and like the Raiders were the worst like rushing team in the NFL by far last year, so they really needed Jeanty, and it was like the perfect pick. Like they got Geno Smith. Their offensive line is above average. They have Brock Bowers at tight end, so they kind of have like they don't have a wide receiver one because he's a tight end, but he's like so darn good. He's almost like a wide receiver one. He had over 1,000 yards, and like 90 something catches, so and like over 10 touchdowns. But now that the Raiders become a pretty interesting pick now if Jeanty's off the board at 5, because like they do need a wide receiver one, so they could go T-Mac, Tetra McMillan. I don't think Pete Carroll's gonna do that. He's never drafted like a wide receiver like that high in his NFL coaching career. He's known for taking running backs. He had USC. He had Lindell White and Reggie Bush. He had beast mode Marshawn Lynch with the Seahawks. So, but he usually, if he doesn't go running back, he usually goes cornerback or offensive line. So like the two most plausible picks, I believe, for the Raiders, if Jeanty's off the board at 5 with the Jaguars, which is like what I'm hearing a lot, like doing my research and stuff, and listening to some other insiders and stuff, they could either go Jahdae Barron. He's the best corner, outside of Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter's the best corner and the best receiver, but outside of Travis Hunter, Jahdae Barron's like the best corner. So they could go Jahdae Barron. He did have like the Legion of Boom in Seattle with Chancellor and Richard Sherman. So he could go Jahdae Barron, or most likely he's probably going to go offensive line. And in that case, he probably takes Armand Membo. Since Will Campbell's gone, the best offensive tackle, you could take the second best offensive tackle or the second best cornerback. So really you're going to decide, are you going to protect your quarterback, or are you just going to shut down the opponent's, best receiver? So like Pete Carroll's history, he's a defensive minded coach. So he could really go Jahdae Barron, or Armand Membo. My guess is they go Armand Membo at number 6. So I'll put Armand Membo number 6. Then the Jets at 7, they're going to stay with Tyler Warren. The Jets really need a tight end. The last 2 years, the Jets only have 6 touchdowns from tight ends the last 2 years. So that's 34 games, and they have 6 touchdowns from tight ends. That's like the worst production in NFL by far. It's not even close. So they really need Tyler Warren. He could play tight end. He could split out as a slot. He could play fullback, H-back, like fullback or H-back. And there's times at Penn State where he even played like wildcat quarterback. So they already have a mobile quarterback with Justin Fields, but like Justin Fields isn't like the most accurate passer. They already have Garrett Wilson. They have their wide receiver 1. If they don't trade Breece Hall, they have their RB1. They have Breece Hall. I don't know if the new coach wants him. There's talk they might trade him. And they got some younger backs. They might, there's talk also about using running back by committee. But either way, they have the running backs figured out. So all they really need to solidify the offense for Justin Fields and give him what's good with the tight end and the young quarterback is it gives them a safety valve. Like if you look at like Jaden Daniels last year, he was so good, because he's just a special player. But what really helped him as a young quarterback is he had a tight end, he had Zach Ertz, he had a safety valve. If Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry wasn't open, or if he couldn't dump off to Eckler or Brian Robinson, he had Zach Ertz, a veteran tight end. So I think for a young quarterback, giving him like a really good tight end is like a safety valve, being able to dump off to the flats, throw something over in the middle. Justin Fields like to move around. I think Tyler Warner is just such a great fit, and they've had such bad production at tight end. It's almost like the most obvious pick, and honestly, like he's almost like the best player on the board at this point. And they don't need T-Mac, so like I think T-Mac, I have him higher than on my board than Tyler Warren, but they already have Garrett Wilson, so they don't need T-Mac, so they need Tyler Warren. And number 8, if you look at my mock draft, like the thumbnail that my wife did. Like in my mock draft, I think personally the Panthers should take Tetro McMillan, T-Mac. To me, he's the best receiver in the draft by far. He's my wide receiver 1. And my logic for this, I don't think the Panthers are going to do this. I think they're going to take Jalen Walker. But personally, I would take Tetro McMillan because you have Bryce Young. He's going to his 3rd year. Usually quarterbacks take a huge leap from like their 2nd to like their 3rd year. Like he kind of went through like the baptism by fire last year. He had a rough rookie year. He had, not the best head coach. And then he had, they got rid of Frank Wright. They hired a new coach. And then, like, the new coach benched him. And they had, Andy Dalton start, part of the season. And Bryce Young had to, sit on the bench and basically learn from him. And, what I was looking for was, like, how is this kid going to respond? Is he going to, crumble? Is he going to, accept it? Is he going to learn from it? And, like, Bryce Young thrived. He came back and he was a good quarterback. And he proved to me that he is the Panthers QB1. He is a franchise quarterback. He's not like a top-tier quarterback, but he is like a tier 3 QB1. So they have their guy. They have their franchise quarterback. So, like I said, when you build your team, they don't need an offensive tackle, but you could go out, their coach is a defensive coach, so he's going to take the next best defensive end. He's going to take Jalen Walker. But I just feel like if you have, a young quarterback, they have Chuba Hubbard, they have their RB1, but last year, like, his best receiver was Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's like 33, 34 years old. Like, he's older. Like, get him a true wide receiver 1 and let the kid play. So I would take T-Mac. If I have my franchise guy and he's protected, I'm going to help him. I'm going to make sure he has weapons. He has a wide receiver 1. He has an RB1. That's what, the Jaguars are doing with Trevor Lawrence. They're getting him Ashton Genty. They got him Brian Thomas Jr. Like, get Bryce Young some darn help. Get him T-Mac. But there's just too much talk that they're going to go Jalen Walker. And, Jalen Walker is like for sure a top 10 pick. So I don't hate the pick. I just feel like Bryce Young is just throwing to like some garbage receivers. Like, give him some freaking help. Honestly, like, he's throwing to, like, nothing against Adam Thielen, but he's been out of his prime for like the last 5 years or so. So, like, get him some help, but I would take T-Mac, but they're not. They're going to take Jalen Walker. So number 8, I believe the pick will be Jalen Walker. And then we get to number 9, which is, oh my gosh, it's like the most interesting pick. I've talked so much to like my buddies and, anybody who'll listen to me about, what the Saints should do and like where, like, Shadur Sanders is going to go. Some people have them, like Mel Kiper has Shadur as like his QB1. I think Cam Ward is my QB1, because he just has such a higher ceiling than Shadur Sanders. But Shadur Sanders is 100% like my QB2. Like it's not even, to me, it's not even close. It's like Cam Ward, Shadur, and like everybody else right now. So I think the Saints, because Derek Carr has like either this mystery shoulder injury or he just wants to like be traded, like he's pretty much not going to play this year. So they have Spencer Rattler, and that's it. And like Spencer Rattler ain't it. So like they need a quarterback. So I would personally, I think they should take Shadur Sanders, but maybe they don't, you know. So I'm gonna say they go Shadur Sanders. You know, I think that's the best pick. It's the most logical pick. Like they need a quarterback. They haven't taken a quarterback in the first round since Archie Manning in like the 70s. So like they need, you know, they're a pretty poorly ran organization. So it's kind of like you have no clue what they're gonna do. But they brought in a new coach, Kellen Moore. He's an offensive-minded head coach. He's an ex-quarterback. You know, he played, you know, with the Cowboys. He backed up, you know, Tony Romo. And he played for us for a while. He was the offensive coordinator, you know, with the Cowboys, with the Chargers, and now with the Super Bowl champs, Eagles. So, you know, he knows what he's doing. He's his first year, like bringing Shadur Sanders. He's his first year. Like, to me, Shadur Sanders is like the most NFL-ready quarterback in this draft by far, and it's not even close. And, you know, that doesn't mean he has the highest ceiling or he's the best quarterback, but he's the most NFL-ready. So get your quarterback. You got your head coach. Get your quarterback and then start building, you know? So I think they should take Shadur Sanders, but do they? I don't know. I have no clue what they're going to do. And, like, honestly, like, nobody knows if Shadur is going to go anywhere from, like, number 3 to, like, number, like, 21 or lower to the Steelers. And some people even think he's going to go in the second round. So, I mean, like, honestly, like, in this draft, like, the hugest wild card by far is Shadur Sanders. I think he should be a top 10 pick. Will he be? I have no clue. I'm, like, at the very best, I'm, like, 45 to 50% sure that the Saints take Shadur Sanders. They could go Jackson Dart. That's the other quarterback they're talking about. So, like, it's really up to, like, what Kellen Moore likes, like, who he likes, who he thinks fits his schemes better. I just feel like with Jackson Dart, like, even if you like Jackson Dart better than Shadur Sanders for whatever reason, just because you think he's a culture fit better, a scheme fit better, like, I wouldn't, if I were the Saints and they do take Jackson Dart, like, I would trade back. Because, like, to me, to take Jackson Dart in the top 10 is, like, a huge reach. I don't think he's, like, worth a top 10 pick. He's not worth top 10 money. I think he still needs to be developed. He played for Ole Miss. He played for Lane Kiffin. He had a lot of benefits with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is a great offensive coordinator, a great offensive mind. You know, he's been extremely successful. He draws up, you know, very brilliant plays. He helps his quarterbacks a lot. So I feel like Jackson Dart had, like, a lot of handicaps at Ole Miss that, like, Shadur Sanders didn't have. So I feel like if you do take Jackson Dart and you want to take him in the first, that's fine if the Saints do that because they need a quarterback badly. But if you're not going to take Shadur at 9 and you're going to take Jackson Dart, like, don't take Jackson Dart at 9. Trade back and get more picks and then take Jackson Dart at, like, you know, 17, 18, 19, 20, something like that, 21, or even like the mid-20s. Trade back, get more picks. You're a bad team. Get more picks, get your guy. But if you take Jackson Dart, trade back. If you're going to take Shadur, stay at 9, take Shadur at 9. I think the other pick they could do is they could take the other cornerback from Michigan, Will Campbell. He's like my cornerback 3. And if they do want to just go defense, they could take Will Campbell at 9. Or they could, I think that might be a little bit of an overdraft. But they could trade back and maybe to like the 14, 15s and take Will Campbell, you know. The only other pick I could think of is if they take like Mike Green. Like Mike Green, I think is a really good like sleeper defensive end from Marshall. He's like my third best defensive end. I don't know if they want to take him at 9, but, you know, if they don't want to trade back, they could take, you know, Mike Green, a defensive end. Because, you know, I think taking him in the top 10, I like a little bit better than taking Will Campbell in the top 10. I would trade back to take Will Campbell, but if they can't get any trades, and they don't want to take Shadur, they could just take, you know, Mike Green at 9. So that's like the only other like plausible scenario I can think of for the Saints. But like to me, like the Saints are like the by far like the hugest wild card because they have a new coach coming in. And, like, you know, nobody knows what's going to happen with, like, Shadur Sanders. I've heard, like, everything under the sun at this point, so. And then at number 10, we're at the Chicago Bears. So the Bears don't need a wide receiver. They have Rome Odunze, they have DJ Moore, they have their quarterback Caleb Williams. They signed 3 players on the offensive line. Now we're at number 10 for the Bears. And since the Jaguars aren't taking Mason Graham, I feel like a good pick for the Bears and a safe pick for the Bears in the top 10. Because in the top 10, you really don't want to miss. I say the Bears will take Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham. And honestly, like, there hasn't been like a lot of talk about them taking him. But, you know, he's the top 10 pick. I thought he was going top 5. To me, he's a top 5 or at least the top 10 pick. So I thought he was going top 5. So he kind of like, you know, if you can't get like who you want, I thought, you know, the Bears really want, you know, Ashton Genty just to like solidify the offense and have like no excuses for Caleb Williams this year since he was the number 1 pick. And he had like a disappointing year to say the least. You know, they got him a new head coach. They got him a rebuilt offensive line. He has, you know, his wide receiver 1, his wide receiver 2, his tight end 1 with Cole Kmet, and you get him, you know, Ashton Genty. There's no excuses. But since Genty's going to most likely be gone by number 5, I would just take the best player on the board and take Mason Graham. He's like, you know, don't overthink the room. You know, don't try to get cute. Just take the best player. You take Mason Graham. That's it. You know, it's over with. Then number 11, then I'll just drop Jahdae Barron down 1 pick and have the Niners take Jahdae Barron. That actually also makes a lot of sense for the Niners because they just lost Tradarius Ward to the Colts in free agency, so they need their CB1 so they can take Jahdae Barron, have him on a rookie contract for 5 years. And you know, Niners since like Harbaugh have been kind of like building their team on defense. Now John Lynch is their GM. He's a defensive an ex-defensive player, an ex-safety for the Bucs, and he was like very defensive minded. So I think like Jahdae Barron going number 11 to the Niners, it fills a very important need. You know, like after quarterback, offensive tackle, and defensive end, you can argue like having like a shutdown corner like Darrelle Revis, like Revis Island, is like the 4th most important position. You know, I think that's a little more important, having like a shutdown corner than like a really good like linebacker. So I think they take Jahdae Barron, the Niners at 11. He kind of falls to them. Then we get to the Cowboys at number 12. And we need a wide receiver like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we have obviously CeeDee Lamb, like in my opinion, like a top 3 receiver in the league. But after that, we have literally nobody. We have CeeDee Lamb and nobody else. We have Dak Prescott as our quarterback and CeeDee Lamb. Like we have Jake Ferguson at tight end. He was a pretty huge disappointment last year just because he was hurt off and on. But, you know, before that, you know, a couple years previous, I really thought he was going to be good. So he needs to come back healthy and get back, you know, to living up to the hype. But we have no other receiver for Dak Prescott outside of CeeDee Lamb. And, you know, if you're a team and you look at the Cowboys and you're scheming to stop him, you're like, okay, they have CeeDee Lamb and what? So just double CeeDee Lamb, you know, double CeeDee Lamb and have, you know, just have like your best corner shadow him all game and just take a safety, have him sit over the top, you know, play center field and just double CD all game and force the Cowboys to beat you any other way. So like we really need a wide receiver. So T-Mac's still on the board because the Panthers are most likely taking Jalen Walker, like I said. So we take Tetra McMillan and we just take the best player on the board, number 1, and we take like our biggest need is we need a wide receiver too, even more so than we need a running back because we do need like an RB1 still, but at least we have, you know, Javon Williams and I don't even want to say Miles Sanders because, you know, Miles Sanders, like, to me is not, I don't know why we signed Miles Sanders. To me, is a waste of a signing, a waste of money. We already had Javonte Williams from the Broncos. So I don't know why the heck we signed Miles Sanders. I don't think he makes the roster. He probably is going to get cut. So, but we, you know, Tetra McMillan is just too good to pass on. And I feel like we need help in the passing game more so than we do in the running game. And I say that because like either 3 or 4 of our offensive line positions are kind of like we're still trying to figure out. So we need a lot of help at offensive line too. So we might as well, you know, draft a receiver. And we have our 2 blue chip receivers, CeeDee Lamb and Tetra McMillan. We have our quarterback, Dak Prescott. We have our tight end, Jake Ferguson. And then we, you know, in the second round, we can either take an offensive lineman, maybe like a Tyler Booker from Alabama, or we just get a running back and take a, you know, Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, or Hendrickson, he probably will be gone by the time we pick, though, in the second round from Ohio State. Trayvon Hendrickson. Or I think it's more likely we get Quinshon Judkins by the time we draft in the second, unless we move up. But I feel like, do we need to move up to get Trayvon Hendrickson, or if we just keep our picks and get Quinshon Judkins? I'd probably just wait. Take T-Mac in the first, get Quinshon Judkins in the second, and then in the third, we either take a cornerback or start drafting and fixing our offensive line. Even though it's like a little late, I just feel like wide receiver and running back are like way bigger needs, because we do have Trayvon Diggs. He is coming off injury, and then hopefully we'll have Bland come back from injury, and hopefully if we're like really lucky, we're going to sign Michael Parsons, but I really hope we get Overshown to come back this year from his injury. I don't know if he'll come back and play the whole year, if he'll come back at some point this year, but I think at some point, maybe 4 weeks in or so, hopefully he can be back, maybe 6 weeks max. He'll be able to come back from his injury, because it looks like his rehab's going like super great. So at 12, I'm going to have the Cowboys take Tetro McMillan. I always call him T-Mac, but just for everybody else, we'll take the Arizona wide receiver Tetro McMillan. And then at number 13, I feel like the Dolphins, there's a lot of talk that they might take a corner just because they're looking to trade Jalen Ramsey. And so it would make a lot of sense to go like a cornerback. So I think like the two most likely picks that they do is either they take Will Johnson, the Michigan corner, like the third best corner in my opinion. Maybe some people have him as their CB2. I like Jahdae Barron a little better, so he's my CB3, but some people have Will Johnson as their CB2, so it's fine. I'm not going to argue much. I think they're close, but I think Barron is a little better in my opinion. I like him a little better. I like his playing style a little better, and I just, feel like he's a little bit better, but, sometimes it's all just about culture fit. If they're close and you think he fits the culture better, your scheme better, you're just going to take the other guy, But I feel like what the Dolphins need is they can either go cornerback, because they are going to lose Jalen Ramsey. They're looking to trade him. They just have to find a player that can, pretty much want to pay $21 million for a cornerback who's kind of, in my opinion, like really not in his prime anymore. So I'm happy like the Cowboys haven't gone after him. Like luckily, like Jerry Jones being cheap in free agency like works in our favor this year, so we're not going to overpay for Jalen Ramsey. If it were like Jalen Ramsey, like when the Rams won the Super Bowl and they got Jalen Ramsey, like I would definitely go after him and pay him $21 million. But since like that was like 4 years ago, like I'm not gonna like pay $21 million for Jalen Ramsey. So they could go corner, but since Tua's had so many concussions, and like he's like your franchise guy, and you paid him like over $250 million, you need to protect him. So I'm gonna have in my mock, I'm gonna have the Dolphins draft an offensive tackle. So I'm gonna have them draft Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle from Texas. And then at number 14, this might be a little high for a lot of people, but I love Malachi Starks, and the Colts need a safety. To me, he's one of the best safeties in the draft, so I'm gonna have the Colts take Malachi Starks. I just watched him play. He's a ball hawk. He's a hard hitter. He's all over the field. He gets a bunch of tackles. He's just a football player. So I feel like with the Colts, like either if for some reason like the Jets don't take Tyler Warren and they go like Armand Membo or something, and they just go offensive tackle to protect Justin Fields. Like my argument for not doing that is because Justin Fields is already a mobile quarterback. He's going to be moving out of the pocket anyways, and their offensive line isn't like a drastic need. So I feel like for them, a drastic need is getting him a tight end. But for some reason, if the Jets take Armand Membo and Tyler Warren's on the board at 14, then the Colts should take Tyler Warren because he's the best player by far at that point. But in my mock draft, I'm going to have them take the Georgia safety Malachi Starks. I think that really fills a position of need. And, they also do need a tight end, but they can get a tight end like later on. So I'll just have the Colts take Malachi Starks. I just really feel like Tyler Warren is going to be off the board, but I feel like the two most likely landing spots for Tyler Warren is 7 to the Jets or 14 to the Colts. So the Colts do need a tight end, so there's talk that they could go Colston Loveland. I just don't think Colston Loveland, the way he plays, I don't think he fits Shane Steichen's offensive scheme very well, so I don't think it's a good fit. So that's why I'm having Malachi Starks go to the Colts, because they're like the two biggest need the biggest needs for the Colts are tight end and safety, and then I think interior offensive lineman. So, but the interior offensive lineman they can get like in the second round or third round. So I feel like it's either Malachi Starks or Tyler Warren if he's still there. I feel like they might go Colston Loveland, but I feel like it's like not only not a good culture fit, but like a little bit of a reach. But it's really more that it's just not a good culture fit. Because I love Colston Loveland, I just feel like he'll be a better fit where I have him going. And I'll tell you guys in a sec. And at number 15, the Atlanta Falcons really need help on their defensive line. It seems like the last 10 years they need help on their defensive line. They did pick up Grady Jarrett in a free agency, so that's good. But they also, I'm going to have them take Mike Green. He's the best player on the board at this point. He's my defensive end 3, and he might be like the biggest steal in this draft. Honestly, if the Atlanta Falcons, can get him at number 15, he might be the biggest steal because he had I think like 14 or 15 sacks at Marshall last year. He was playing at a little lower. It is D1, but it is like not the 5 biggest division. It's not the Big 12. It's not the Pac-12. It's not the Big 10. It's not the SEC. It's not the ACC. So it's not like a Power 5 conference. But he just had crazy production. He might have had like 17 sacks actually. I don't know if it was 15 or 17, but he had a bunch of sacks. He had the most sacks in college football, and he had the most sacks in college football by like a lot. Like he was playing like a little lesser competition. But you could even make the same argument for Ashton Jeanty playing with Boise State, but he did run for like 2,600 yards and like 29 touchdowns. So I was like, at some point, like the guy can just play. So I would have the Falcons take Mike Green. He's like not only fits like a huge need, but he's also like the best player on the board, and he might be like the biggest steal of the first round. And then with the Cardinals, I'm gonna have them take Will Johnson. There's a few positions they could take. They could draft an offensive tackle to help Kyler Murray. They could take a receiver. I don't know if they want to go like Matthew Golden at this point at number 16. I think once you get to like 16 and lower, taking like Matthew Golden is like a pretty good spot for him to go. So they could go Matthew Golden. Maybe they go offensive tackle. Maybe take like a Josh Simmons. If they want to do that, or like maybe they could take a risk and take Gray Zabel like a little high. It might be like a little bit of a reach. I have him going in the first round, but a little later. But I feel like taking Will Johnson right now, he's still on the board, and like they did draft Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, so I don't know if they really need another wide receiver, but it just might be nice to take a wide receiver, and maybe they just love Matthew Golden and they want to take him. But I feel like taking Will Johnson right now at this point, if he's still on the board, I feel like it's like a pretty, I feel like it's like the safest pick. And like when I was doing my mock draft, I saw he was still on the board. I was like, you know what? They need a why not give him a shutdown corner, shore up that defensive secondary. So he's kind of like the best player on the board. But like another player I can see them taking is either an offensive tackle like a Gray Zabel or a Josh Simmons, maybe more so. I would probably go like Josh Simmons more so than Gray Zabel. Like the only thing with like Josh Simmons is he is coming off like a pretty serious injury, so like GMs and scouts might be a little scared. But in the middle of the first round, you take offensive tackle to protect your quarterback. It's not like he's in the top 10 or something. So I could see like Josh Simmons. I have him going Will Johnson. Or I could see like a Matthew Golden, but I'm going to say Will Johnson for the Cardinals. At number 17 for the Bengals, they really need a defensive end, so I'm going to have them take Donovan as a Raku. He could be like a steal too at number 17. Him and Mike Green could be like the 2 steals of the draft, like going a little later. Like these guys ball. Like they did play like in a little like lesser competition. Like Ezra Raku played Boston College. Like he was in the ACC, but like the ACC isn't like what it was like 5 years ago. So, but the Bengals were a horrible defense last year. I mean, defensively they were egregious. They're atrocious. They're a horrible defense, and they might be losing Trey Hendrickson because they don't want to pay him his money. So they might let him walk. So they really need like a cheap defensive end option. So like them drafting Donovan Ezra-Raku is like almost like a lock if Mike Green and some of these other guys are already off the board and like they don't try to move up. So like the Bengals are like another team that could potentially like try to move up to like well, at least they have to move past 15 because the Falcons almost are a lock to take Mike Green if he's still there. So they if the Bengals like really love Mike Green and they say like we need Mike Green and we're willing to give up some draft capital, they might have to move up to like number 13 or something like that, potentially, or 14 or something like that. I mean, I don't know if I don't think the Cowboys are going to trade back because, you know, if T-Mac is still on the board, the Cowboys are going to stay at 12. So maybe like they trade with the Dolphins, but even the Dolphins like might not want to trade back because if they don't want to like miss out like on like a player they take because they need an offensive tackle. So they're you know, I have them taking Josh Simmons because I feel like there's some other options they could do. So if they don't want to take Josh Simmons, I just feel like they needed to protect Tua. So I have them taking Simmons, but you know, the Bengals could just wait and take Azaraku, you know, and not give up draft capital and still get their guy at 17. So I am taking Azaraku. And then the Seahawks at number 18, I have them taking Gray Zabel just because like they have a lot of offensive line needs. They have Sam Darnold, and like one thing with Sam Darnold is he had like his best year by far with the Vikings last year. They won 14 games. They were 14-3. So I mean, the one thing with Sam Darnold is if you want to like rattle Sam Darnold, you want to get Sam Darnold off his game, get pressure on Sam Darnold, sack Sam Darnold, make him throw under duress, and like he basically crumbles. So the Seahawks paid him, you know, some money, and they gave him, you know, a 3-year deal, I think for like $100 million. So they invested in him. So if you're going to invest in that guy, you know his kryptonite, his weakness is like when he's under duress and he has to scramble and he has to kind of throw when he's not on tempo. Like draft an offensive lineman, protect your quarterback. So I'm gonna have them take Gray Zabel. And then for number 19, I'm gonna have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take Alabama linebacker Jaha Campbell. And if my mock draft, if the NFL draft works out like my mock draft, and the Bucs are able to get Jaha Campbell at 19, that's a steal. Because if T-Mac's off the board with like the Panthers, like in my PFF mock draft, I had the Cowboys taking Jaha Campbell at 12 because T-Mac is gone. But like in my mock draft, what I think is going to happen, I think Jaha Campbell actually falls to the Bucs at 19. He's the best linebacker in the NFL. I mean, he's the best linebacker in college football, and they have a really good linebacker, but he's aging. Levante David, so he's been a very good linebacker for them for a lot of years, but he's aging. You know, they need to kind of get ready to replace Levante Davis. So why not take the best linebacker in the NFL and take I have him on my watch, and take Jaha Campbell, take the best, you know, collegiate linebacker. So I think for them, if they get him at number 19, that's a steal. And then the Broncos have a pretty easy pick. You know, they take North Carolina running back Omarion Hampton. They need a running back really bad. They let Javonte Williams go, so they really need a running back. They can take the second best running back in the draft. He's still a great running back. He still has back-to-back years of over, I think, 1,600 rushing yards and over 15 touchdowns in each year. So he's definitely like the second best running back in the draft, and he's the only other running back that I have in my first round and a first-round grade on. He's like for sure like the RB2, like Genty and Hampton are the two best running backs by far, and then there's like pretty big slide off, you know, when you get to like the RB3s and RB4s and some of the later round like running backs and stuff. So the Broncos are a pretty simple pick. They take Hampton at 20, and then we get to 21, which is going to be Hi Grayson. I'm almost done, buddy. What happened? So then we get to number 21, and we I have the Steelers taking Jackson Dart. So I feel like the Steelers really need a quarterback too. We have no clue if Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with the Steelers or not. Who knows? He keeps going back and forth if he wants to play for the Vikings. I don't think the Vikings want him. I don't know if he wants to play for the Steelers because I think he probably figures they're not going to win a Super Bowl and he's only going to play like maybe one more year, and maybe he's coming back to like win a Super Bowl. But he's also kind of like not that interested and doesn't really care that much if he like does like play or not, or does retire, because like the whole like New York Giants like experiment like went like way worse than everybody thought. Like, you know, he has some good players, and you know, they kind of just like played very poorly as a team, and he kind of just, you know, wasn't really a great leader. I don't think he's ever been a really great leader. So I don't know what the Steelers are going to do. In my opinion, the Steelers should just wash their hands of Aaron Rodgers and just take Jackson Dart and start fresh. And, I don't know how long they'll keep Mike Tomlin. I don't know if they're going to, change the regime and try to get like an offensive-minded coach to help, Jackson Dart in the future. But I think they need to take a quarterback. Jackson Dart's like the third best quarterback. I think the other two guys might be gone. Maybe Shadur will still be there depending on what the Saints do. But, they got to do something at quarterback. And, you can't really rely on, Aaron Rodgers, playing his games. So I think they just take Jackson Dart. And then we get to the Chargers. We get to Colston Loveland. He played at Michigan. The Chargers coach, Harbaugh, coached at Michigan. He loves Colston Loveland. It's just a perfect fit. For some reason, if Colston Loveland isn't there, then they can go Michigan defensive tackle Kenneth Grant. That's the only other obvious pick that I could see the Chargers doing. But I think like tight end's a bigger need, especially since they lost some offensive weapons in the offseason, so they should probably go tight end more so than defensive tackle. But for some reason, if the Colts do take Loveland, which I don't think they will, because it's not a good fit, then they take Colston Loveland. I think that's like a perfect fit, and go get back with your old college coach, get back with Harbaugh, and then Loveland's the second best tight end, and like the Chargers need to help Herbert with some weapons. They have, they got Lad McConkey last year. They get Colston Loveland this year. He has two young weapons for the next 10 years, and they should be doing pretty good. And then we get to number 23 with the Packers. And I have Matthew Golden going number 23 to the Packers. He could go earlier, like I said, to the Cardinals. If he's still there, I think, the Packers really need a wide receiver one. They have Christian Watson, but he's kind of injury prone. He hasn't really stepped into that position. They have, like Romeo Dobbs and, some other guys, but they really don't have like a true wide receiver one. So I feel like if he's still there, if the Cardinals like don't take him like early, I think they should take, I think the Packers is like a really great fit to help out Jordan Love and get them, get him like a true wide receiver one. And then like in Matt LaFleur's off, sorry, I messed the camera up. Help out Jordan Love and get Matthew Golden, all his speed is 4.29 40, and Matt LaFleur's offense I think would be great for the Packers, and they can have like a true wide receiver one. They have Kraft at tight end, and they picked up Josh Jacobs, so they have their RB1. So I think picking a receiver for the Packers would really help them. And then we get to the Vikings. I have them taking Kenneth Grant, the Michigan defensive tackle. I just feel like at this point, if he falls this far, they should probably take him. The only other pick I could think that the Vikings could plausibly take is if Malachi Starks is still on the board. They could take Malachi Starks because they do need like a safety to replace Harrison Smith. So if he's still on the board, I'll just have them take either I think the only two picks they could really go to fill needs is Kenneth Grant or Malachi Starks. Hey Grayson. Oh, at 25 I have the Houston Texans taking Gray Zabel. I think they really got exposed last year against the Chiefs in the playoffs. CJ Stroud is not the most mobile quarterback. He is mobile, but he's really a pocket passer, so they needed help against like the Chiefs and the Chiefs defensive line, and they really got exposed. So I think taking like offensive tackle, protecting your franchise quarterback, they could go receiver. They could take like Emeka Egbuka or something like that, but I just feel like protecting CJ Stroud is more important. But like the other pick I could see them doing is taking like a wide receiver, like Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka, because Tank Dell's going to be out for the whole year with the ACL tear. So they have Nico Collins. They did lose Stephon Diggs to free agency to the Patriots. So they could go receiver, but I just feel like protecting CJ Stroud, protecting your franchise, and then taking a receiver like in the second round, like the ASU kid Higgins or something like that would be fine for him. And I just feel like it's more important since their offensive line looks so poorly against the Chiefs. Like when it's playoff time, you want to make sure like your offensive and defensive lines are solidified. So I feel like they could take Gray Zabel, but they could go like a Luther Burden or like a Emeka Egbuka for sure. And then the Rams at 26, I have them taking Emeka Egbuka. They did lose Cooper Kupp, but they did pick up Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams might only play like another year or two. So they have Puka Nacua, and then they'll have like Emeka Egbuka, and like they'll have Devontae Adams for like a year or two, and they'll probably have Stafford for like a couple more years too. And then they have, Kyrie Williams, so they'll pretty much be set offensively with Sean McVay. So I feel like a receiver is like a pretty good like pick for them, taking Emeka Egbuka since they did lose Cooper Kupp. He was like such a big part of their offense. I know they do have Davante Adams, so like Emeka Egbuka can kind of be like the wide receiver 3 right now. And then like when Davante Adams retires, like in maybe 2 years, he can kind of like go in his year 3. He could be like their wide receiver 2. So I think that's a good pick for them. I feel like, Emeka Egbuka, if he's still on the board at 26, that's like a good pick for them. I don't know. I mean, they could go like offensive line or like something like that, but I think just taking like a wide receiver and giving like Stafford, another weapon. Like when you're trying to make a Super Bowl run, like Stafford has a huge arm. Like I just think that's the best pick, like for Sean McVay's offense. He's such a great offensive mind. And then at 27, I have the Ravens taking James Pierce Jr. Some people don't have him in their first rounds because like some behavioral issues, but I have like honestly a lot of people grade him out as like potentially like a top 10 pick or a top like 15 pick. So I have him drop him all the way to 27 to the Ravens, and I just feel like the Ravens are always about defense. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, all those Super Bowl winning defenses. So I feel like getting like a James Pierce Jr. to go with that defense in the AFC North, I just feel like it's like a good fit. And like if he falls to 27, which he probably will fall to like somewhere between like 27 or like maybe if not 27 to the Ravens, like maybe 32 to like to the Eagles. Like the Ravens could go like Mikael Williams. I just feel like James Pierce Jr. is just the better talent. And if you're a good franchise and like the kid has like a little bit of like behavioral issues, like you can just work on it, I mean, he's not a top 10 pick. If you're a top 10 pick, like, okay, yeah, you pass. But if you're in like the low 20, like the late 20s to like to the 30s, I think you can take the kid. I don't think it's like a huge risk. And then at number 28, I have the Lions taking Luther Burden III. Just another receiver for that high-flying offense. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Jamison Williams. They have David Montgomery, they have Sam Laporta, they have Jahmyr Gibbs, they have Jared Goff. They lost Ben Johnson, but just getting like a Luther Burden III and just keeping like the high-flying offense going, just because they had a lot of injuries defensively. So now once they get healthy, their defense will be quite a bit better. So just get Jared Goff, another weapon, and just keep the offense like top 1, 2, 3 offense in the NFL, and like they're going to be in the NFC playoffs every year with all those weapons. So I think taking Luther Burden, if he like falls to 28, which I think that's about the range he'll be drafted. Maybe he might get picked a few picks earlier, and you might get a Emeka Egbuka or something, or another receiver. But I just feel like if he's there, just getting another weapon. The way the offense has been, how many points they've scored, how many yards Goff's thrown for. I just feel like that's like the best pick for them right now. And then for the Commanders, I mean, they need defense. Their defense was like their only like issue last year. So I feel like I have them taking the defensive tackle from Ole Miss, Walter Nolan. I think that'll be like a great pick for him. That might be one of the steals of the draft too. That might be like one of the 2-3 steals of the first round. If they can get Walter Nolan at 28. He had a lot of production. I think he had like 6.5 or 7 sacks. That is like an interior defensive lineman, which is like pretty productive. And he had a lot of tackles for loss. So their defense, and specifically like their defensive line, was like their Achilles heel. So if they can get Walter Nolan at 28, I mean, that could be like one of the steals. So I think that'd be like a great pick for them. They have Dan Quinn, a defensive-minded head coach, great schemer. He did wonders for the Cowboys and for the Cowboys defensive line. So if they can get like a Walter Nolan, like a big body like that, I think that would be like really, really good for the Commanders. And then at 30, I have the Bills taking the Ole Miss cornerback Trey Amos. I just feel like you watch that championship game against the Chiefs. And, there's been so many games where Josh Allen's gotten the Bills the lead against the Chiefs, and then Mahomes gets the ball the last 2 minutes and they lose. So I think if you can get like a shutdown, like CB1, you can stop like the Chiefs offense, or you can stop the Bengals offense, or you can stop the Ravens offense. And all these great quarterbacks in the AFC, like you got to have like a shutdown cornerback. So, I don't know if they trade up, maybe they could, if they want like a better cornerback, they could trade up, to get like Will Johnson and trade up like 16 or something like that, or like 15, or like in like, like maybe like 13 or something like that, 13 to 16, somewhere in that range if they want like a better cornerback. But if they can get to keep all their picks and get Trey Amos, I think they'll be doing pretty good, because they really need like a shutdown quarterback after they've lost Tre'Davious White. They haven't really replaced him as their CB1, so I think that's like the best route for them, is to take a cornerback in the first round. And then the last two, the Chiefs, it's pretty apparent. You watched that Super Bowl, their offensive line got annihilated by the Chiefs defensive line. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life basically the whole game from the start of the game. So I have him drafting an offensive tackle, Josh Connerly Jr. I don't know if the Chiefs move up. I think they'll just, kind of stay at 31 probably and just take, one of the offensive tackles, because they need a few offensive linemen, because they lost, offensive linemen in free agency. Plus they had, their offensive line was kind of going like south last year anyways. So I think they take Josh Connerly Jr., the Oregon offensive tackle. And then as my final pick, I have the Eagles taking the Georgia defensive end, the other Georgia defensive end besides Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams. And I think if they can get Mykel Williams at number 32, that's like a pretty nice steal too. That's kind of like the GM Rosenhall. That's kind of like what he likes to do. He'll sit at 30, 31, 32 and just get good quality picks like in those 29 to 32 range. So I don't know if Mykel Williams falls this far. Some people have him going top 10. I just feel like, to me, he's not a top 10 talent, only because I just don't see the production. He has the physical traits, he has the athleticism. I just haven't seen him put it all together, and I haven't seen the production. So I feel like he needs to be developed still. So I think since the Eagles do have a good defensive line and a good defense already, you draft a player like this, let him be a rotational player, let him develop, and then in a couple of years he could be a superstar. Because he has all the physical traits. He just has to learn. He just learn the fundamentals and kind of put it all together, and then you'll see the production. But I think last year he had 5.5 or 6.5 sacks as a defensive end, and for me, that's just not good enough to draft in the top 10. So I have him going 32 to the Eagles. So that is my 2025 first round mock draft. Thank you for watching it. Hopefully you stayed all the way to the end. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Turn on your notification bells, and just stay tuned, man. I'm gonna have so many videos. This is a very fun time of year for the NFL. The draft is tomorrow. Hopefully you guys watch it. Keep my mock draft in mind. You can leave some comments. Tell me how you do. Tell me your opinion. Tell me what you think. Tell me what teams you like. Tell me what you think your team, what your team needs are, and what players you might want to draft, and how you think I did. I know I have some fans from our family channel who are different sports fans from different teams that they told me over the years. So tell me what you think about the picks I've done, and just stay tuned, and I'll have another video coming out soon. All right, guys, peace.